Welcome to the Institute of All Intelligent Life. My name is Alan Keislar. I'm just trying to adjust the light here a little better since we've had we've had a shining thing up there, so I've gotten rid of that now. So we are continuing our discussion about extraterrestrial spirituality, and we are going to be discussing today more information about the spiritual universes, and particularly the central paradise, that is the geographical center of infinity, as it is described in the Urantia Book. So from that source I'm going to be reading some, and I'm going to be discussing the ideas presented in this this book. I personally have no doubt has an extraterrestrial source, and so we're going to be seeing what these extraterrestrials have to say about paradise. I had described in the last class the spiritual universes, that is the eternal, shining, unlimited universes that are eternal from the past, eternal in the future, never created, perfect in every way. So there are many, many such spiritual universes. But all of them, as I'm going to be reading shortly, they are surrounding one body, one place, which is called paradise, which you may say is the abode of God, the throne of God, the original residence. So these words are all kind of inadequate, but that's the best we can do. So first I'm going to just read a little bit about what is called the Eternal Isle of Paradise. And it is described as the center of the universe, center of all the universes, the center of all the spiritual as well as material universes. But the important thing to realize that I'm going to be stressing throughout is that, as it will be obvious as we discuss this is spiritual, but it's not, what could we say? It's not immaterial. I'm using the word material to refer to this universe, or these universes that we experience in time, and spiritual for the eternal realms. But the eternal realms are, although they're not material in the sense of the word that we're using it, they are material in the sense of having physical reality. We sometimes think of spirit as formless, and spirit as somehow something misty or something that we can't quite see or touch. That's true that we can't see or touch it now, but it is seeable and it is touchable by spiritual senses. So this central isle of paradise is the most gigantic organized body of cosmic reality in all the master universe. Paradise is a material sphere as well as a spiritual abode. Here the word material is being used in a different way than I've been using it. I would say paradise is a physical sphere as well as a spiritual abode. All of the intelligent creation of God is domiciled on material abodes, again, physical abodes, I would say. Hence must the absolute controlling center also be material, literal. Again, I would say physical, literal. And again, it should be reiterated that spirit things and spiritual beings are real. So this has to be stated again and again, because we have been so misinformed, I guess, is the best word. We have gotten wrong ideas about what spirit is. And as this paragraph, this first paragraph of this description about the eternal isle of paradise is emphasizing already, repeating, that these spiritual realities, these spiritual beings, everything spiritual is real. It is physical. It has a location, not in space. It's before space, maybe is the best word. Outside of space, maybe we could say. But it has a location, not in time and space, but it has an eternal location. And let me just say before I go on, since I mentioned time, in the spiritual world there is, things do happen, but time doesn't exist there the way it exists here in the material world. Time really means that things decay, things deteriorate. We grow old, we die. We build a beautiful building. It may last for 100 years or a few hundred years or maybe a few thousand years, but probably not a million years. It would be a pretty unusual building to last that long. Of course, some things last for millions and billions of years, but eventually everything deteriorates. That is the influence of time. So when I say that the spiritual world is outside of time or is before time, I don't mean that things don't happen there, but I mean that it's outside of the influence of this force of time where everything deteriorates. That is, time goes from, well, again, this is another discussion which I have had before and I won't go into now, but time is characterized by deterioration, whereas the spiritual world there's no deterioration. All right, now I'm going to go on reading. This is a beautiful, beautiful description. The material beauty of paradise consists in the magnificence of its physical perfection. There, I like that word there, not materials perfect. In the magnificence of its physical perfection. The grandeur of the Isle of God is exhibited in the superb intellectual accomplishments and mind development of its inhabitants. The glory of the central isle is shown forth in the infinite endowment of divine spirit personality, the light of life. But the depths of the spiritual beauty and the wonders of this magnificent ensemble are utterly beyond the comprehension of the finite mind of material creatures. The glory and spiritual splendor of the divine abode are impossible of mortal comprehension. And paradise is from eternity. There are neither records nor traditions respecting the origin of this nuclear isle of light and life. So that's the first point, that this is an inconceivable, to us it's inconceivable, the beauty and the magnificence, the perfection of this Isle of Paradise. Now the word isle is used intentionally, as we'll be going into describing its shape, you might say, in the future of this class today. So again, I'm not going to read this all, because there are many things about this book that are very, very difficult to comprehend because of our own conditioning, our own training, our own limited ideas and misunderstandings about things. But I will read some of this. God dwells, has dwelt, and everlastingly will dwell in the same central and eternal abode. We have always found him there, and always will. He is cosmically focalized, spiritually personalized, and geographically resident at this center of the universe of universes. So I'll just say a little bit about that last phrase, universe of universes. There are millions and billions of universes. There are millions and billions of material universes. And there are millions, some say a billion, spiritual universes. But the center of all of these universes is this Isle of Paradise that we're describing today. And In a very real sense, everything revolves around that central isle. All right. Again, you are not able to comprehend much about the divine residence because of its remoteness from you and the immensity of the intervening space. But those who are able to comprehend the meaning of these enormous distances know God's location and residence just as certainly and literally as you know the location of New York, London, Rome, or Singapore, cities definitely and geographically located on Urantia. That is the name the Urantia Book uses for this planet, for our planet of Earth. So the Urantia Book says that just like we can visit New York, London, Rome, or Singapore, just giving a few examples, we can say Lahore, Karachi, or Delhi, or Moscow, or Johannesburg, or Rio de Janeiro, Tokyo, all these different places on this planet we can go to. We may never have been to some of them, but we can go there. So similarly, we may not have been to the Isle of Paradise, but we can go there. In fact, that is our destiny. That is our destination, our ultimate spiritual goal, to come into the literal presence of God. So, provided with all the necessities for the journey, it is just as possible to find the personal presence of God at the center of all things as to find distant cities on your own planet. That you have not visited these places in no way disproves their reality or actual existence. That so few of the universe creatures have found God on Paradise in no way disproves either the reality of his existence or the actuality of his spiritual person at the center of all things. Okay, now we're going to read, again, this gets very, very complex, but I'm just going to introduce a few of the ideas here. The nature of the eternal isle, the Isle of Paradise. Since you are beginning to glimpse the enormousness of the material universe, discernible even from your astronomical location, your space position in the starry systems, it should become evident to you that such a tremendous material universe must have an adequate and worthy capital, a headquarters commensurate with the dignity and infinitude of the universal ruler of all this vast and far-flung creation of material realms and living beings. So I can just say this book was written, or was presented, maybe a better word, to us between 1925 and 1935, almost 100 years ago. But at that time, much less than today, but at that time, astronomers were beginning to realize that the universe was much bigger than we had thought for many centuries or thousands of years. But now we know even more than at that time. This is, millions and billions of galaxies, every galaxy having an average at least of billions of stars, some probably having trillions, bigger ones. So it's it's beyond our mind's ability to grasp how big even the universe is that we now can see with our advanced telescopes, our different new types of telescopes. So, but now comes something very interesting. This is fascinating. In form, Paradise differs from the inhabited space bodies. It is not spherical. So, stars, planets, moons, generally are all pretty much shaped like a sphere, a ball. But Paradise is not like a sphere. It is definitely ellipsoid, being 1/6 longer in the north-south diameter than in the east-west diameter. The central isle is essentially flat, and the distance from the upper surface to the nether surface is 1/10 that of the east-west diameter. So a couple of questions are going to come up. But first, so basically it's like a thick pancake or a thick chapati, or sort of like a naan. It is not completely round. It's a little bit longer in one direction than the other, and it's much wider than it is high. It's kind of flat like that. So the question that comes up, you're talking about north and south, where does this north and south come from? So we're going to come to that shortly. But it's not the same distance every way. In other words, it's not a sphere. Okay. I'm just going to go on reading, and I'm introducing these ideas, which are pretty far out, frankly. They're very astonishing to me. I mean, when I first was reading this, I said, what is going on here? Where did this knowledge come from? The more I've studied it, and I've studied it for over 20, 25 years, it seems, again, I've said before, there may be parts of it that are not accurate in the sense that they're presented in a certain way with a certain purpose for certain persons who were the recipients of it 90, 85, 90 years ago. But we can sort of understand which parts are like that. So there are 5%, 10%, I don't think more than that, but a real percentage of it is something that we might not be able to accept or understand at this point because of our own backgrounds. But a lot of it is very, very valuable information. So that's what I'm reading now. Okay, I'm just going on reading from where I left off. The description about how it's wider, slightly wider from north to south, or slightly longer, I might say, from north to south than it is east and west, and it is much wider than it is tall. These differences in dimensions, taken in connection with its stationary status and the greater outpressure of force energy at the north end of the aisle, make it possible to establish absolute direction in the master universe. So this is the source of absolute direction. There is an absolute north and south. Of course, our scientists know nothing about that. They have no access to the spiritual realm. But there is actually a north and south, an absolute north and south, which derives from the fact that the north end of the Isle, one end we can say, of the Isle of Paradise has a greater outpressure of force energy. That is, energy is emitting from, or energy is coming out of the Isle of Paradise. And a greater amount of energy comes out at one end, and that's the north end. That's the way north that is defined. So the central, I'm just going on reading, the central isle is geographically divided into 3 domains of activity: upper paradise, peripheral paradise, nether paradise. So the upper, the middle, and the bottom, or the lower. We speak of that surface of paradise which is occupied with personality activities as the upper side, and the opposite surface as the nether side. The periphery of paradise provides for activities that are not strictly personal or non-personal. So this is quite incredible, but we'll just go on reading some pieces from here and there. So now, so there are the 3 areas of paradise: the top, you can say, the middle, and the bottom. And now this is, anyway, it's, I don't know how much of this I should read, because it's already perhaps so much that it's starting to, as it did to me when I first heard this, my mind started going, whoa, what is going on here? But there is this description here. And the top part, which is also divided into different regions, is the residence of God. And the middle, or peripheral paradise, is where there is intermediate types of regions. and which are related to the local universes of time and space, that is, the material universes. Not that those areas are material by any means, but when we, material beings, gradually over long time, progress to higher and higher levels of existence, eventually we can end up on paradise. In fact, that's our goal. And just one description I'm going to read about the peripheral paradise, that there are areas where the co-creators of material universes, have exhibit areas dedicated to the local universes of time and space. And it says there are just 7 trillion of these historic reservations now set up or in reserve. But these arrangements altogether occupy only about 4% of that portion of the peripheral area thus assigned. So this gives us some idea of how big. It's said that the Isle of Paradise is by far the biggest thing, biggest place, biggest area in all of creation. All of creation's the wrong word, because the non-created, the eternal, as well as the created universes, they're all, in fact, as I understand it, all put together, all the spiritual universes, all the material universes put together are smaller than the Isle of Paradise. But in any case, it is far bigger than anything else. So just this one thing I've read here, it gives these specific numbers, which is kind of amazing. 7 trillion, that is 7,000 billion areas that have been set up for exhibitions about the material universes in this peripheral area of paradise. And that, all of those together, 7 trillion of these vast, huge exhibit areas, make up only 4% of the portion of this peripheral area that has been assigned. In other words, a portion of the peripheral paradise has been set aside, maybe it's a fairly small portion too, for these exhibits about the material universes, and only 4% of that area is assigned, and that small portion includes or houses 7 trillion of such areas. So I think any of this really, the whole idea of 1 trillion, what is a trillion? That's really beyond our mind's comprehension, really. We can give it a number, we can put so many zeros after a 1 to say that's a trillion, but what is actually a trillion of any one thing? It's really hard for our mind to grasp that. But these are just some statements here that I'm reading in order to give us an idea of what this spiritual Isle of Paradise, the central region of all existence, is like. And finally, I'm just going to say a little bit about the nether paradise. Concerning nether paradise, we know only that which is revealed. These authors, by the way, are not from this planet. Many of them, this book is written by at least, simply by studying the writings, you can tell that there's at least a dozen or so different authors. There's different types of styles of writing or speaking. So there are different authors. Some of them evidently are from the spiritual world itself, and some of them are elevated personalities who are resident in the material universes. So the author of this paper is saying that we really don't know about that nether paradise because personalities do not sojourn there. In other words, personalities don't live there. It has nothing whatever to do with the affairs of spirit intelligences, nor does the deity absolute their function. We are informed that all physical energy and cosmic force circuits have their origin on nether paradise. So this is Interesting, huh? In other words, I guess we could say physical energy, cosmic force circuits, I guess that's like gravity, force, spiritual gravity, absolute gravity, originates from this nether paradise. I hope I didn't make a mistake there. Anyway, and another very interesting thing about this, occupying the outer margins of the undersurface is a region having mainly to do with space potency and force energy. The activities of this vast elliptical force center are not identifiable with, anyway, this is getting more beyond my understanding, so I guess I'm not even going to read it because it's, we need to develop the vocabulary to understand these things, which means that we have to do a lot of study before these things can even make sense to us. So, but there are different parts of the nether paradise. Just the outer, there's an outer region that has to do with space potency and force energy. And there are other parts of the nether paradise, the inner zone, the mid zone, the outer zone it describes. And then the one or two more points, then I'll end it because this is getting a little long and complicated already. Space respiration. That is, space, our scientists today have some idea of the physical material universes expanding and contracting. So it appears from this description in this book that space also, space itself, meaning not the stars and the material universes, but space itself has a contraction and expansion, respiration, breathing, like we would say. So this, I'll just read a little bit, and this is going to take a lot more study because I'm using vocabulary now that requires some background, but I'm just going to read it. We do not know the actual mechanism of space respiration, this author is saying. We merely observe that all space alternately contracts and expands. This respiration affects both the horizontal extension of pervaded space and the vertical extensions of unpervaded space, which exist in the vast space reservoirs above and below paradise. In attempting to imagine the volume outlines of these space reservoirs, you might think of an hourglass. In other words, this is the Isle of Paradise. Most of what we consider pervaded space, that is space in which things exist, or in which there are universes and stars and planets, they are, if my hand here represents the Isle of Paradise, it's mostly in this area like this. In other words, it's just like our solar system or our galaxy, where there is a central sun, and the planets, or in the case of the galaxy, all the stars and planets, they circulate in sort of a plane, like the plane of the ecliptic, the sun and the planets. So similarly, pervaded space, the totality of space, is sort of in a plane, and there is unpervaded space going upwards and downwards. So this is very, very interesting. But so I'm just going to read a little bit more about space respiration, and then we'll go to the questions. As the universes of the horizontal extension of pervaded space expand, so the horizontal direction of space, pervaded space, the reservoirs of the vertical extension of unpervaded space contract, and vice versa. So in other words, as pervaded space spreads out, the unpervaded space contracts. And as pervaded space contracts, unpervaded space expands. So it sort of maintains a balance. There is a confluence of pervaded and unpervaded space just underneath nether paradise. Both types of space there flow through the transmuting regulation channels, where changes are wrought making pervadable space non-pervadable, and vice versa in the contraction and expansion cycles of the cosmos. Unpervaded space means unpervaded by those forces, energies, powers, and presences known to exist in pervaded space. We do not know whether vertical, that's the unpervaded space, is destined always to function as the equipoise of horizontal space. We do not know whether there is a creative intent concerning unpervaded space. We really know very little about the space reservoirs, that's unpervaded space, merely that they exist and that they seem to counterbalance the space expansion contraction cycles of the universe of universes. So, anyway, we can end there. I'll just say one thing. They even give a time frame to these cycles of space respiration, that it's more than 1 billion of our years that the one breath, you could take, say, of the cosmos takes. All right, let me just see if there's anything else here that I want to... Yeah, there's another whole section on gravity, paradise gravity, that everything, all the spiritual universes, as well as all the material universes, they are under the pull of gravity, that is the spiritual gravity, which, as I said, comes from paradise. And all of reality circles around central paradise by the influence of this gravity. I think to conclude, I will just read 1 or 2 sentences about the uniqueness of paradise. Paradise is unique in that it is the realm of primal origin and the final goal of destiny for all spirit personalities. So just as God is the original source of everything, paradise is the realm of primal origin, and it's also the final goal for all spirit personalities. Although it is true that not all of the lower spirit beings of the local universes are immediately destined to paradise, paradise still remains the goal of desire for all supermaterial personalities. Paradise is the geographic center of infinity. I love that phrase. Paradise is the geographic center of infinity. It is not a part of universal creation, not even a real part of the eternal Havona universe. Havona is the word the Urantia Book uses for the spiritual universes. So it's not even really a part of the spiritual universes. We commonly refer to the central isle as belonging to the divine universe, but it really does not. Paradise is an eternal and exclusive existence. So that's a little more about... let me just read one more sentence here. God's residence is central and eternal, glorious and ideal. His home is the beauteous pattern for all universe headquarters worlds, and the central universe of his immediate indwelling is the pattern for all universes in their ideals, organization, and ultimate destiny. Paradise is the universal headquarters of all personality activities and the source center of all force space and energy manifestations. So, this is a little bit about the Isle of Paradise, the central, eternal, what is the phrase? The geographic center of infinity. All right, let's see if anybody has some good questions about this. Again, I'm not going to read most of these that just say hello or something. Kalimullah Khan says, Sir, your English is very good, but mostly people might have difficulty understanding it. Give some brief lines in Urdu as well, please. What I've done as I did this last Saturday, and I announced then that I will do it every week now, I will speak in Urdu, and what I will do is I will summarize the classes that I've had. So this is a very good suggestion, but I don't want to do it now. These classes will be only in English, but I will on Saturday, let me just get this time straight now, Saturday morning at 9 a.m. in California. That's Saturday evening at 9 p.m. in Pakistan. So I will speak in Urdu there, and although I did not do it on this last class, this last Urdu chat, I will do it starting the coming Saturday. All right, so I will speak in Urdu, giving a summary of what I'm saying, what I've said today. All right. Okay, well, I can say that what to speak of for Urdu speakers, even for English speakers, this is very complex and difficult to follow, difficult to understand. Perhaps it was so difficult that people couldn't even formulate questions because I don't see any questions about what I've read here and what I've stated. So we'll just leave it at that then, and give everyone a chance. If you're really interested in understanding this, you can go back and listen to this class again. It will be posted shortly after we finish, and you can hear it again if you want, or you can wait till Saturday when I will summarize everything in Urdu. All right, thank you all very, very much for listening. I see that we have some viewers here, plenty of viewers, so I'm sorry if it was too difficult, but do you think it's easy to understand God and the residence of God, the Isle of Paradise? These things are not easy, but we're getting a little bit of information from extraterrestrial sources, beings who know about this from personal experience. Okay, look forward to seeing you again in 3 days. That will be Monday to Thursday evening in America, and Friday morning